Namaste. Welcome to Urban Chatterati. And today I'm with Abhijit Ayar Mitra to discuss the recent developments and updates on the Rashmi Samant case and the Oxford University. So, Abhijit, welcome to the show.
Vetrivel, thanks for having me on as usual.
So, Abhijit, what is the recent update? We have seen there's some anger in Delhi, there is some murmur in the government circle and in the wider intellectual academic circle as to what is happening at the Oxford, why they are not doing anything against what is a clear-cut case of targeting, harassment, and hounding of a girl student from India. And also they're protecting the person, Abhijit Sarkar, who has made blatant comments against the religious belief of a community, which will not be tolerated otherwise.
Right. So the first thing that I know for a fact is that apparently a lot of criminal cases have been filed against Abhijit Sarkar here, specifically with regards to harassing a woman and harassing several women from the looks of it. But this one quite damaging to Rashmi's mental health. So that was actually a big issue for the National Commission for Women. The second thing has been there's also been cases filed against the Oxford Hindu Students' Union because they kind of wiped all their profiles from the websites after they issued the formal statement. But apparently screenshots of all of them have been taken and cases have been filed against them as well. So I don't think they realize what's waiting for them when they get back to India. The third part of this is the anger that it spurred on in government. Because what happened after the parliamentary question was raised, if you remember, has been that a lot of this Abhijit Sarkar fellows' writings, people started paying attention to them. And there's one place where he literally absolves Churchill of the Bengal famine and says the Hindu Mahasabha was responsible for it, that they exacerbated the famine by denying food or withholding food from Muslims or preventing food from reaching Muslim areas.
I'm sorry,
so that they would,
what is it again? I never heard about such bizarre claims before.
This is the claim he's made. And apparently this is why some white supremacists or people who need to brownwash their colonial history have funded his research grants through the British Academy.
Okay.
Incidentally, the head of the British Academy, the new head of the British Academy, is an Indian. His name is Hetal Patel or Hetal Shah, I forget now.
Mm-hmm.
And the minister, Kwasi Kwarteng, is a person of color. And they're particularly irate that this has happened under these two. Of course, this is a new head of the British Academy. But all of this happened. This fellow has got funding for essentially brownwashing white atrocities. Which, is a market out there. There's a white supremacy, even though he's pretending to be a leftist. Remember, all of this champagne leftism, if you want to call it that, champagne socialism, is actually a very sophisticated way of very frequently brownwashing, white crimes in that sense. So that has not gone down very well. The fact that the vice chancellor of Oxford had come down, taken a picture with Modi and used that entire thing for fundraising and then behaving in this fashion has not gone down well. All of these were facts that came to light. People dug this up and started sending it to the government after the foreign minister made a statement in parliament. And it turns out that Manmohan Singh had apparently funded a $3 million chair at Oxford using taxpayer money. So, none of this has gone down well. So there's a lot of things in motion at the moment, both in terms of criminal legal action against certain persons, as well as governmental action in the works.
But why is not Oxford taking any step? Because suppose if she were not a Hindu student, if she were Muslim, even Christian, let's say because a Christian majority country, or a Jew, no one would have tolerated such a thing.
Because there are no Hindus are essentially a very they're a quote unquote a model minority. They don't go around rioting. They don't go around burning buses. They don't go around doing cancel campaigns and things like that, unless it's one of their own. Because let's not forget the Oxford Hindu students against whom there are a lot of cases pending right now. criminal cases, by the way, they went after Rashmi themselves, right? So Oxford isn't acting, we don't know why, but clearly they haven't felt the stick and they're going to be feeling the stick quite shortly.
And when we come to this Oxford India Society, Oxford Hindu Society, where Rashmi Samant was in hospital because of stress and BP, they came out with a statement which was a clear-cut character assassination and basically justified the bullying and abuse which was directed towards her.
Absolutely.
So, do you think that these people will face some consequences for their action? Because this kind of activism has consequences on the ground, that we are seeing in the case of Rashmi. So, why shouldn't they be feeling any consequences at all?
Absolutely. I think there is some move underway in Britain as well. But in India, if they return, well, best of luck to them. You don't just go around arresting, but the legal fees itself will be quite significant for them to get out of what they've gotten themselves into. So best of luck to them.
Okay. But when we come to Abhijit Sarkar, the way he's being protected, because the things he has been saying, Oxford would never tolerate it otherwise. And you are hinting that he's being protected because he's acting some kind of an asset to brownwash the colonial atrocities. And we are seeing this thing happening because you see, many people on the left, so-called left, as you got the champagne socialist, they have started saying that we should not promote anti-colonial studies, we should not promote post-colonial studies, we should not even talk about subaltern because apparently it empowers native Hindus, So it is empowering Hindutva in India. So what is
and remember, the classic example of this is that William Dalrymple, who, if you remember, said that, his greatest angst with Black Lives Matter and talking about their colonial history was that Hindus will start talking about their slavery and their oppression under colonial history, which must not be spoken about.
Yes. Right. Because apparently it empowers these savage Hindus.
Exactly. So So understand there are a lot of these, I hate to use this term, but Gangadins, who will be leftists out there, but they're essentially a tool of white supremacists to brownwash their own history. They want you to talk about everything. They want you to talk about Nazi war crimes, about German war crimes, about Stalin's atrocities, but don't you dare talk about British atrocities in India. Or we will, of course, very quietly fund people who will defray the whole thing. So if you remember, Shashi Tharoor wrote a book on Britain's dark history in India. And to offset that, you get somebody like Abhijit Sarkar to say, well, Shashi Tharoor is more polemic. Factually speaking, it was the Hindus that created and the Hindu Mahasabha specifically, that caused the worst damage of the Bengal famine. And mind you, this is something very akin to Holocaust denial.
Exactly.
Right. So basically what Britain is saying, and what Minister Kwasi Kwarteng, New College, Oxford University, and the British Academy and its head Hetal Patel are saying, or I don't know what his name is, are saying is that you can't deny crimes or command responsibility for a specific religion, namely Jews, but we will fund you to deny it under the name of, counterpoint or academic freedom to do this to Hindus. If that isn't classic racism perpetrated by, Ali rental brown people, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and it's not just the Bengal famine, Abhijit. When we read the history of the British Empire in India, those were 200 years of mass starvation and famine, where millions and millions of people would die every 10 years or so. The history of British India is full of famines. It's not just that the Bengal famine is the only one we are talking about. So they were, and if you read the British effort to contain the famines, the rations which were given to the people inside the relief camp of the British India was less than what was given to the Jews in the Holocaust camp. So more people used to die inside the British relief camp in the famines than outside it. And we are denying this
exactly right.
Responsible for it
and
themselves.
And again, this is where you come back to the principle of command responsibility. which they want to avoid at all costs, right? And see, look, I'm completely willing to accept that British history in India is shades of gray.
Yeah.
There isn't black or white about it. Fine, that is an academic point to be made. For example, when the British came, that was the first time in about 500-600 years that Indians finally got freedom of religion, right? Because they went, otherwise their temples were subject to demolition. They couldn't celebrate their festivals openly. You never know when the next, ethnic cleansing or pogrom was going to happen against you, state-sponsored, incidentally. So, when the British took over Bengal, for example, it was seen as a liberation of sorts.
Yeah,
but then there was something very different happening. On one hand, because even though you had Turco-Mongol rulers, their link to their original homeland had been cut. It was still a very extractive economy, but extortion and extraction were still localized into India, from the poor to the elite. Here, it became a full-on export of extortion and extraction, which is why you see the number of famines increase so dramatically under the British. I think they don't realize how much, the Austrian War of Succession, because it became a big issue in the South between the French, under Dupleix and the British in the South. It led to several famines. It changed the entire food patterns of the South, in fact. Right? You look at the food patterns prior and after, it changes completely. Why is it that the number of famines and the number of people dying increased so systematically under the British? So why is it that, say, Cooch Behar within Bengal didn't experience the Bengal famine? The king saw it coming. He was very clear about this. And, Rajmata Gayatri Devi has given several interviews about it, where, the king saw this coming. They saw what was happening. They had an early warning system, and they prevented grain exports, and they stabilized the situation. And so Cooch Behar did not experience the Bengal famine, whereas the rest of Bengal did. Now, it's just a complete abdication of state responsibility out there.
Exactly.
So there are crimes of commission and there are crimes of omission. And, basically what the Brits are trying to do is use the Nuremberg defense, which is, I did not know, I did not specifically kill, I did not sign the papers killing.
But that's wrong, because even if you go by the British records, especially if I'm not getting the name wrong, W.W. Hunter, the civil servants like him, they had actually prepared extensive records of the food vulnerability in Indian population, as to if the prices will go up or if there's a famine, how many people might die, which section will be affected. So it's not that they didn't know. They knew about it very well, that what is the actual state on the ground. And in fact, there was, when this famine in the Gujarat region, that Saurashtra region, the British officer was actually praised by the British government for not interfering in the free functioning of the market forces. When there was a famine and the price increase, and there was mass hunger.
It wasn't the free functioning of market forces. It was actually the free functioning of market manipulation. We need to make a difference between market forces and market manipulation, because hoarding and things like that are very much market manipulation, which technically shouldn't have been allowed in a free market. This is why, the British Empire wasn't a capitalist empire, it was a mercantilist empire. Exactly. And very frequently people forget the difference between mercantilism and capitalism.
And it's not just food hoarding, because if you read the British Empire's history, one thing they did was to completely destroy the food security of India. And that is why the famines became so frequent. It's not about hoarding per se. Now they're trying to pin the blame on Hindu businessman who did hoarding and killed people. That's not true, right? That's
But tell me, how is this any different? How is this any different from Jewish blood libel, saying that the Jews did this, therefore this happened?
Yeah,
this fellow Abhijit Sarkar is a bigot in every sense of that word. His funders are bigots. They're essentially the British version of the Ku Klux Klan. The British Academy is the Ku Klux Klan. They're really, if you look at it, they're the British version of the Nazi Party. under the guise of academic
Extreme claims,
freedom,
maybe
what
true.
they're essentially doing is promoting, they're essentially whitewashing white crimes, and they are promoting narratives holding the victim responsible for their own misfortune. You know, it's how different, just because it's done under an academic veneer, how is it any responsible from a clown saying that the woman is responsible for her own rape because she didn't dress properly?
Yeah, sad. Yeah. But tell me one thing, why is Oxford willing to stake its entire reputation on Abhijit Sarkar and on defending the people who bullied and harassed Rashmi Samant?
Because they can get away with it, number one. They think that it is no consequences. B, because they think that this entire controversy is somehow just going to die down and they can ride it out. C, remember, most of the people who went after Rashmi Samant were the Hindu society and Hindus in Oxford itself. Right? So they basically think that it's okay if we lose this one girl. We don't care if it was, if it was unfortunate. But we can't lose the rest of our full fee paying students. We can't take action against them. So it's very much a revenue calculus wherein Rashmi Sawant or her detractors are essentially monetized commodities. Okay, they're not people
of the Oxford University.
They're not people, they're essentially cash cows.
So this is what has become of Oxford University today.
Well, this is what Oxford University has been for a very long time. Let's not pretend it was ever about academic standards or morals. This was always about making money.
But tell me one thing, if I'm not wrong, then during the time of Manmohan Singh, some $3 million was given to Oxford to set up a chair or something. So how much money is going to Oxford from India through the grants, to the people who are donating it, through the students' fee, and they're using that money to basically demonize India and harass Hindu peoples and do nothing when such hounding is going on?
Exactly right. And therein lies the problem, right? So we don't know. So this is why, it's one of those things. We have no accounting of how many Indian Hindu students have gone out there and what the impact is going to be. But I think that's what the government's looking at the moment.
And there must be NRIs who are donating to Oxford as well, because they are very well-to-do community.
Of course, because remember, it's a social validation mechanism as well. If you don't have a very good education or aren't particularly smart, an association with Oxford can basically essentially whitewash you. They need, brown washing and whitewashing are kind of complementary. You brown wash me and I whitewash you. I give you that veneer of respectability. You take away my veneer of racism.
Yeah. So, final point, Abhijit. What is being done by the Hindus in the UK? Because this is certainly not limited to Oxford. That this is happening in many campuses, not just in UK but around the world, where this kind of Hindu phobia, demonization of Hindus or abusing Hindus is being made normal.
I don't think what Oxford management, New College management, and the Oxford Hindu Society realize what they've set in motion. Now, there are things that we don't want to talk about publicly, but I don't think they realize what's going to hit them.
Okay. So thank you, Abhijit, for the updates. And we hope that some justice will be done in this case, because such kind of hounding and this kind of harassment of anyone, of any religion, any background, any ethnicity is simply unacceptable. So thank you for listening to us, audience. Please do not forget to subscribe, join and support the channel. And thank you, Abhijit, once again.
Thank you.